Hello my friends, I'm Officer Bob Anime and Games the Dystopias Zone. So, in doing my research for this series, I've come to realize the importance of maintaining a good writing team.
I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but I think we take it for granted sometimes. Toy kind of did when it came to Digimon. I mentioned last time some infighting between Zero Two's head writers, but there was also a lot of executive meddling going on that frustrated the whole team to no end. It got so bad that many of the original writers threatened to leave the project midway through. Thus, Toei was forced to compromise by promising them that as long as they finished Zero Two, they'd give them a lot more free range when writing the next season. As a result, we got the best Digimon season ever. However, since some grudges never fade, most of the writers then turned in their 2 weeks notice, and all of them swore off writing for Digimon ever again. So yeah, if you ever thought that Digimon's quality dropped after Tamers, there's your reason why.
Now, I don't think it's impossible for new writers to write new stories for Digimon. I dare say 2/3 of Digimon Frontier is pretty good. But to try and do a direct sequel without any of the original writers?
Inconceivable!
In direct contrast, Precure to this day has been able to maintain a fairly loyal writing staff, with 2 of the episode writers from this season still writing for Moho Girls, along with others from seasons past. Now granted, they don't always turn out gold, hint hint. But still, it goes to show how much care goes into this franchise. It nearly faced cancellation, but they wouldn't let it go down without a fight, and the conclusion to this series is a tribute to that.
With that in mind, let's wrap things up with Fresh Precure's third and final act.
So in spite of it seeming like Chiffon had been cured of her whole creepy dead eye thing, it seems like she hadn't completely grown out of that phase.
Not the worst case of the terrible twos I've ever seen.
The baby gotta love me!
Apparently now, the Precure have to occasionally play the Clover Box's lullaby for her in order to keep the Infinity Form asleep. So essentially, Chiffon's become like that annoying marionette from FNAF 2. Though to be fair, I think Infinity Chiffon is a lot creepier than anything out of that game series. What's worse is that when she does go Infinity, it ends up exposing her exact location to Labyrinth thanks to a handy little radar provided by Mobius' right-hand man, Klein, who mentions something else is going to come and help Solar and Westar in their efforts. In the meantime though, the denizens track down and proceed to engage the Precure for Chiffon. They create 2 Nakewameke, but at this point in the series, even 2 MOTWs are no match for the Precure anymore. Thus, a new player joins the game to keep things interesting. A new Labyrinth denizen named Northa joins the fray and... wait. North? South? West? East. Damn these anime obsessed with pun names.
It's not a pun, it's a play on words!
Anyway, Miss North introduces a new monster type, the Soiwatase. Yet another hominin name, this time meaning...
Gimme.
Though rather than a sandwich, I'm pretty sure she's referring to Chiffon. And since it's the final monster type of the season, it's of course the strongest, actually absorbing its own brethren for strength. I'd say that's kind of creepy, but then this face appears on screen. Good god. Anyway, the new monster gets in a few good hits, but thanks to a power-up from Chiffon and the Clover Box, they are able to defeat it. Bit of a short first outing, but I guess they did spend a lot of the animation budget on stuff like this. Not complaining.
And you can't say Northa didn't make one hell of a first impression.
And sure enough, the Precure feel the same and realize they need to do some serious training. Miyuki suggests a good place where they can hone their skills. They head to a massive mansion owned by the Mikoshiba Saibatsu.
Oh, does that mean the best heroine from Nozaki-kun is gonna appear?
Mikoshibake, yokoso!
Oh, it's just one of those 3 stooges from Love School. Where's my Mikorin?
Anyway, they take them to a special training facility that's... underground? What the hell?
Mikoshibake, Chika Himitsu Tokkunjou e yokoso!
This is kind of coming out of nowhere. I mean, unless this kid's company is actually a subdivision of Wayne Industries, I see no reason why they would own a secret underground training facility. Hell, I don't think even Batman owns tech that can instantly recognize that a person's strongest trait is sprinting, and again, why would anyone own this unless you have ties with the UA high school?
Screw the rules, I have money.
Well, anyway, thanks to the plot convenience-o-matic, the Precure decide to train individually to improve their strengths.
Okay, that actually makes sense. They can improve their individual movesets and then later come together to become a better team.
プリキュアが強くなるためにはダンスよ。
Wait, what?
明日もダンスをしてもらうわ。
Oh boy.
Okay, so the big conflict of this episode centers on the Precure's teamwork faltering because of their concerns towards protecting Chiffon. Thus, Miyuki believes that they have to reform their bonds by practicing their usual dance routines. Now, there are a couple of problems with Miyuki's lesson plan here. One, she's sidelining the individual strength training that she herself said was important, as well as the amazing facility they have to work with. And two, she never bothers to tell them that they're dancing to improve their teamwork, thus creating an even bigger rift in the team when they end up confused and arguing over their training regimens. The Precure are made to look the most at fault here, and while their impatience and short-sightedness is a problem, Miyuki is also being a lousy coach.
I get what she's trying to do. It's that whole let them figure it out for themselves. I took Kendall for a few years, but here's the thing. They're not training for a martial arts tournament. They're training for war! Lay off the Mr. Miyabi stuff for a minute!
I don't know, maybe the absurdity of the secret underground training facility is getting to me, but I think this episode's moral about the importance of teamwork feels a little muddled here when you have a bit of a broken Aesop. Well, whatever, the Precure eventually get back in sync and even develop a new team finisher with the power from the Clover Box. It's admittedly a pretty cool finisher, if a little bit on the long side. The next episode, we see that Heart has suffered the most throughout this final arc, having been relegated to 24/7 organ grinder.
Oh, poor little guy. You know, if grinding that thing is getting boring or repetitive, why don't you play this for a few hours? It won't seem as bad.
Seriously though, I really like this little plot device, the fear that if they ever stop playing the Clover Box, Chiffon might become the Infinity. It adds a good sense of danger to their situation, especially in this episode, after Miki pulls yet another Sayaka parallel and loses an important magical item on the back of a truck. Though in Miki's case, at least she did it while saving a little girl from a car and not pulling a Yusuke Urameshi. In fact, overall, this was a good episode for Miki, as we were able to see a far more mature side to her than what we saw back at the beginning of the series. Even though it was an accident, Miki feels responsible for losing the box and even ends up having a really good exchange with Kaoru-chan.
もうダメだとか諦めちゃいそうになったこと。
お客さんが一人も来なかった時なんかもうやめちゃおうかと思ったよ。でもそんな時はさ、笑顔を想像するんだ。
Oh boy, talking about him during the character analysis is going to be hard. But anyway, the box is later found by the truck driver and given to a little girl to play with, not at all making this look like a long-ass toy commercial, at least not more than usual. The Precure get back the box and play for Chiffon just in time.
And the moral of the story, never let little girls play with Precure toys! Wait.
Next up we get a Daisuke episode that's pretty much like every other Daisuke episode. Okay, this one is a little different in that he tries to hold back his jerk-ass tendencies to gain Love's good graces during a trip to Okinawa. Though, ironically, he becomes even more annoying than usual. Seriously, this kid has so little personality outside of being tsundere for Love that it's hard to get invested in any of his episodes. It'll be a good few seasons before we get decent boy characters.
Until then, boring filler episodes starring a guy who I won't let ruin my OTP. Moving on.
Following this, we get probably the creepiest episode in this whole damn series. North has been keeping tabs on our heroines with the classic pictures on the wall and everything.
Call the police.
And she initiates a plan where she abducts Love's mother, Ayumi, and switches her with Sori Watase in order to abduct Chiffon. Though, thanks to being a former villainess herself, Setsuna quickly catches on to the fake. So yeah, we've got an Invasion of the Body Snatchers plot with Setsuna standing in for Dr. Benno. Love doesn't believe Setsuna's claims at first, so she has to turn to Miki and Inori for help in finding the real Ayumi. They trace their steps back to a coffee shop they went to the previous day and realize she's been trapped in the mirrors?
Wait, so Naruto created a mirror monster of sorts that dragged Ayumi into a world beyond the mirrors. A mirror world, you could say. Oh, Precure, you spoil me sometimes.
おばさまはこのまま家に連れて帰る。シフォンお願い。わかった。
戦え。
Anyway, they rescue Ayumi and eventually Love is able to figure out her mother is a fake.
これはセツなのだって本当のお母さんなら知ってるはず。
I'm your other mother, silly.
They defeat the fake mother with their final their final attack, and we end on a really touching scene where Setsuna fully acknowledges Ayumi as her new mother. this is probably one of my favorite episodes of this series. Not only because I appreciate the references to classic horror and Kamen Rider, but also for this ending. Knowing how artificial Labyrinth is, it's very likely that Setsuna never had real parents, so seeing her being fully accepted into the Momozono family is really sweet. The next episode is another one involving one of those three boys who provide absolutely nothing to the plot in general. That said, this is a kind of fun episode, if only thanks to Westar's antics and Inori's beast-taming abilities. After being invited to a party on a cruise ship by not Mikorin, Inori ends up in a more interesting version of Speed 2 when Westar turns the whole damn ship into an MOTW. Again, it's a pretty fun episode on concept alone, with the Precure fighting a giant boat monster, and Inori's interactions with the animals are hilarious and everything, but ultimately this is filler and we still got like 9 more episodes of actual plot-driven episodes, so let's move on from this. Getting back to the plot, the Precure realized that if they want to stop all of the Infinity outbursts, they should destroy the Misfortune Gauge. And as it just so happens, Setsuna had secretly received a letter from Northa requesting that she rejoin Labyrinth, which she promptly ripped up like a boss. Though now she's realizing that maybe she could pretend to accept the invitation to infiltrate their hideout and destroy the gauge. She knows that anyone who's in the same room when the gauge is destroyed will likely not survive the outpour of negative energy, so she secretly goes at it alone to avoid involving her friends. Still, as you can guess, this is all a trap as Northa mirror forces Setsuna's attack, captures her, and uses her as bait to lure the other Precure. Sure enough, while looking for her, Solar and Westar ambush the team with a Soriwatase. Meanwhile, Northa slowly starts to psychologically break down Setsuna, pointing out her previous sins. But just as Setsuna's about to give up, the team use their convenient transformation trinkets that double as interdimensional telephones to remind Setsuna of all the good she's done since joining the team. With a renewed vigor, she breaks free of Northa's hold and helps the Precure defeat the Soriwatase by pulling a Majin Buu and breaking the dimensional wall separating the Labyrinth hideout from the outside world. They sandwich the poor monster between their attacks and now can all enter the exposed hideout. Continuing right from the last episode, we see all of the Precure enter the mansion and again encounter Northa, who still has all kinds of tricks up her long ass sleeves, this time a perfume that sends each of them into their own personal nightmare worlds.
姉さん、僕はもうダメだ。
和樹？
嫌になったんだ。勉強も将来も何もかも。
Yeah, thing is, I think that's not too far off from what the real Kazuki is thinking after getting solo screen time. I think his last speaking role was all the way back in episode 18, for goodness sake.
Anyway, while it fools them at first, mind games like these don't work on the Precure for long. But as it turns out, this was also part of Northa's plan, as next she has them fight what appear to be monsters, but are actually each other. So basically, Northa used the nightmares to first aggravate them, and then trick them into fighting each other in their agitated states. Actually pretty damn devious. However, thanks to Chiffon and Tart using some convenient Home Alone tactics, they're able to destroy Northa's illusion. Frustrated that her plans are failing, Northa throws out all subtlety and just turns the gauge into a Soriwatase.
Gee, that thing doesn't look the least bit familiar.
Yeah, if Godzilla could defeat it, of course the Precure would have no trouble. But even this was part of Northa's plans.
Good Christ, this lady has more contingency plans than Aizen.
Granted, hers are a million times better, as now that the gauge has been cracked and is outside, it was going to spill all of its negative energy across the surrounding area. However, by combining their powers with Chiffon, the Precure are able to expel all of the energy before a single drop could spill. With that, all seems well, until Northa again proves that she's much better than Aizen by stealing part of Chiffon's essence and begins formulating a new strategy.
Northa, the one anime villain who doesn't rely on just ass pulls.
Going right into the next episode, Northa has combined Chiffon's essence with a leaf from her Soriwatase plant. She plans on using the leaf as a flute in order to play essentially a counter melody to the Clover Box's lullaby, so that instead of sealing the infinity, it awakens it. If this plot at all sounds familiar to you, then yes, it was more than likely inspired by episode 29 of Digimon 02, as the writer of this episode was Mike Hawa. Meanwhile, the Precure are finally going to participate in a redo of the dance tournament that got cancelled like over 20 episodes back. Oh, and also those three boys who keep appearing in this anime for whatever reason tried to form their own dance group in order to win said tournament and impress the girls. They honestly think they can win a dance tournament after what can't be more than a couple weeks worth of training. Yeah, let's just get back to the actual plot, please. So, after implementing a pretty well thought out plan by Northa that included a fun callback to the first episode, Labyrinth finally succeeds in capturing Shiphone. Left in complete shock over being blindsided, Love doesn't take Shiphone's capture all that well. Daisuke then comes in to have a word with her.
Oh well, at least with this, Daisuke can cheer her up and finally have a purpose in this anime.
全然ダメ。
そんなことないっすよ。ダメダメなのは俺の方だ。だから絶対負けられねえって一生懸命練習したはずなのに予選すら通らなかった。だから俺ダメダメなんです。
No kid, you're far worse than useless.
Following this, we get an episode very appropriate for this season.
Oh well, after such a heavy defeat, at least a little Christmas episode will be able to lighten the mood.
It could be a nice episode where they focus on the cheer and wonder of the holiday.
Or we could just go full on Akira.
Seriously, here's some nice nightmare fuel while you're trying to enjoy the holidays. I mean, good grief! Mobius has begun taking over every parallel world, including Tart's kingdom, with only Azukina narrowly escaping being turned into one of Mobius's many mindless slaves. With the human world next in line for total takeover, it becomes all too clear to the Precure that they have to take the fight directly to Labyrinth. Of course, such tactics usually don't have very favorable odds for one side.
Certainty of death, small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
I really like this episode, as not only does it perfectly build the urgency of their situation, it also shows the Precure's own internal struggles, as they have to acknowledge that they're more than likely walking into a suicide mission. Yeah, they never outright say it, kid show and everything, but you can just feel their anxiety through their facial expressions, excellent voice acting, and the fact that they reveal their secret identities to their friends and family as though it were their last will and testament. Again, this episode was written by Maekawa, and he's done an excellent job at building up these girls as true heroines who, in spite of knowing the danger they face, they are willing to do whatever it takes to protect others.
If heroes run away, who's left to help?
While understandably it takes a little time to convince their families to let them go, they eventually gain their approval, and with some parting donuts from Kaoru-chan, the Precure set out on their final mission. Upon arriving in Labyrinth, the Precure are able to take advantage of a significant defect in Mobius' security. That being the fact that nobody reacts to anything. Yeah, by removing free will from most of his people, he's also made them apathetic to the obvious intruders.
I get that Mobius is meant to be an evil asshole and everything, but you think he'd at least program his citizens to alert for invading forces, you know? Sound an alarm, blow a whistle, or just have them screech like banshees to help complete my invasion of the body snatchers joke.
Anyway, as easy as it is for them to blend in, it also gives the Precure and the audience a good look at this little dystopia. It's not exactly a pleasant sight, and as much as they want to liberate them, the Precure have to focus on bigger issues, though Love does briefly help a little girl. Eventually, as they approach Mobius' stronghold, they finally set off some actual alarms, and the baddies give them a proper greeting by splitting the team up in half. To prove their competence to Mobius after 45 episodes of failing, Westar and Solar personally volunteered to exterminate Miki and Setsuna. During their fights, the Precure tried to talk the two off working for Mobius by pointing out how he's a bit of a jerk that only cares about absolute power and doesn't give a crap about them. The denizens don't believe them at first. That is until Mobius opens up a freaking black hole, or delete hole in this case, to take out all four of them. Yeah, you guys might want to renegotiate your contracts. Realizing that they can't all escape, Westar and Solar decide to at least go out as heroes by saving the Precure.
Jeez, Mobius is like the definition of a bad boss. I mean, I don't know who has it worse, the denizens of Labyrinth or Prinnies who work for overlords.
It's not that bad after you get used to weeks of starvation and back-breaking labor, dude.
Oh, hi, Prinny. Say, as I recall, weren't you guys, like, fans of this series? Do you have any opinions?
Opinions? Dude? Oh, where do I start, dude? Well, first of all...
Ah, bug! Oops, sorry about that. I'll be sure to revive you after this review is over.
Thanks. Dude.
Anyway, while Lovey and Inori are fighting Northa, Tart and Ajikina almost save Chiffon, only to get ejected from the building thanks to badly composited portals. Being forced back to square one, the talking ferrets take a donut break and even share some of their confections with a small kid who just comes out of nowhere. It's kind of weird that this one kid would break off from everyone else. Then again, kids do tend to be pretty disobedient. Hell, all it takes to break this kid out of Mobius' control is one Homer Simpson-style donut. Back with the Precure, they're not doing so well as Northa shows how far Mobius' influence has spread, including already taking over the human world.
Well, at least Daisuke's acting like his usual self.
Still, despite Northa's attempts at breaking them, the girls don't give up and continue the fight. And as it just so happens, due to some tampering by Tart earlier in the episode, a live feed of the Precure fighting is broadcast throughout all of Labyrinth.
Either that's one of the most plot convenient malfunctions ever, or GLaDOS here is joining in the fight against Mobius.
Anyway, thanks to the feed, everyone actually stops to watch and are so inspired by the Precure's words that it breaks them free of Mobius' influence. I mean, I guess Mobius might be allocating most of his brainwashing powers on worlds he doesn't yet have dominion over and all that, but all it takes to undo years of psychological manipulation is some inspiring words.
I'm gonna tell you what you're gonna do. Why don't you get a little dirty? You will like clean. And somewhere in the middle, I don't know, you'll figure it out.
I was willing to buy with the kid since he is still young and everything, but people who have been living under Mobius' thumb for years are just instantly able to switch sides? Well, whatever. With help from the easily swayed masses, Tart manages to hack into the Stronghold speakers and play the Clover Box's melody. Thanks to this, the Precure managed to regroup and gain the upper hand on Northa. She tries to counter by transforming into a giant thing.
Unfortunately, she forgot Rule 24 of every toy villain. Don't grow big! That's like the prelude to your defeat, lady.
Sure enough, in the next episode, the Precure are able to score some good hits on the bigger target. But just as they're about to finish her off, Klein joins the fight. But come on, this dude has mostly just been Mobius' secretary throughout this anime. What can he do? Okay, he can actually kick ass. And to make matters worse, he fuses with Northa to become the love child between Frieza and Majin Buu. But yeah, Freeboo turns out to be one hell of an enemy, even shaking off the Precure's team finisher like it's nothing. All seems lost until the team gets encouragement from the people of Labyrinth, including the girl Love helped in the previous episode, as well as Solar and Westar?
I thought you were dead. Nope.
Yeah, apparently Mobius forgot to empty his recycling bin, and the two managed to escape deletion with some help from Chiffon. With the support of all of Labyrinth's citizens behind them, the Precure gained their second wind and unlocked new angel forms. That, as the name suggests, gives them wings and lets them fly. What's the deal with Miki's wings? Those aren't angel wings, those look like they were ripped right off the Freedom Gundam. Well, anyway, with their new forms, the Precure take down the Purple Abomination. And with their new wings and two reformed villains on their side, the Precure were ready for the final boss. Westar and Solar even bust out a new good monster type, the Hohoimina, which is a homonym for Smiley. It certainly looks better than anything that's gonna come out of the Emoji Movie. Entering into the final dungeon, the Precure immediately encounter Mobius. Setsuna actually tries to reform her former master, despite how much of an asshole he's been to her, but...
Mobius-sama!
Holy tickets, you're a robot! You hadn't noticed that yet? Don't you know humans can't fire missiles from their knees and beams from their eyes?
Actually, the whole damn computer system operating Labyrinth turns out to be Mobius. So yeah, the big bad of this magical girl anime turns out to be frickin' Skynet, having been created by the people of Labyrinth to make their lives easier. And as is so often the case in these sorts of scenarios, the AI developed a superiority complex.
You show excellent logical skills for a meatbag.
Anyway, even though they don't have the Governator on their side, the Precure enter Mobius' core. In his domain, Mobius has complete control, including gravity manipulation and shapeshifting into... Oh my god.
You know, it's worth mentioning that Mobius is voiced by the primary actor of both M. Bison and Akuma, having played them in most incarnations and spin-offs of the Street Fighter series. So, right now, I'm listening to M. Bison play a Japanese schoolgirl. Oh, my life is complete.
One by one, he takes down the Precure and their allies. With all of the heroes down, he tries to have them assimilated into his system. All seems lost until...
誰かが決めるんじゃない。自分たちで悩み、考えて決めるから意味があるんだよ。
何？バカな。
私、信じてる。そうよ。だって私、完璧だから。最後の最後まで精一杯頑張るわ。
In a last-ditch effort, Mobius tries sending out copies of himself to destroy our heroes, which proves to be a really stupid idea as those copies are also made up of his own hard drive, which the Precure proceed to smack around. Worst antivirus program ever! Reduced down to a Windows Vista level OS, the Precure tried to show mercy towards the evil AI, asking him if there's anything that would make him happy. Aw, that's actually pretty nice. I'm sure they can work things out and find some common ground.
お前たちを消し去ることだ。
Or he can just be a total prick, that works too. With only seconds to both save Shiphone and escape from the building, the Precure and all the people of Labyrinth join their feelings together to form one big heart-shaped spirit bomb to wake up Shiphone.
3、2、
Nah, of course not. Shiphone puts up a barrier and they manage to survive the explosion. With Mobius defeated, all of the parallel worlds return to normal. The Precure return home to their waiting families, and they finally wrap up that damn dance tournament subplot by winning it. The girls unfortunately have to say their farewells to Cessna, who's going back to Labyrinth with Westar and Solar to start rebuilding.
Yeah, next time you guys invent a super AI or anything like that, maybe you should incorporate these 3 laws I've heard so much about. I'm sure with those in place, nothing bad will ever happen again.
Oh, and also, Daisuke gets totally blue-balled by love. Definite high point of this finale. And thus, our series ends with our main heroine providing some parting words.
みんなで幸せゲットだよ。
In spite of some noticeable flaws, Fresh Precure is a really good anime, and was a great addition to the Precure franchise.
As I said at the beginning, this series was meant to bring the franchise back from the brink of cancellation, and it accomplished that with flying colors, mostly thanks to having one hell of an engaging narrative. As someone who enjoys reading about dystopias, I love the idea that the big bad of this season runs one. That said, I kind of also wish we could have spent a few more episodes in Labyrinth. The build up to the Precure actually going there was really good, but after getting there, it really didn't take that much to get the citizens on their side. Just some inspiring words and donuts were enough to convince them to essentially betray their god. Kind of belittles Winston Smith's struggles. Really, I think if they had just cut down on some of the filler episodes, we could have gotten a good lengthy story arc in Labyrinth, sort of like the one and only good story arc in the entirety of Bleach. Nonetheless, what we did get was pretty epic for a Sunday morning anime, having some dramatic high stakes with the fate of every parallel world hanging in the balance. They usually don't get much bigger than that. The other major contributing factor to this show's success was its overall great cast of characters. Going off in reverse order, let's start off with the bad guys. I really like the original Village trio, and the latter trio, well, not as much. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. Mobius' character is played out. So much so in fact that in the same year that this was airing, so was Power Rangers RPM. Yeah, how about that? 2 toy-related properties, both featuring killer AIs, were airing around the same time on opposite sides of the world. It's almost as if this villain archetype has been done to death. Still, as someone who enjoys cautionary tales about the dangers of over-reliance on technology, I might have found Mobius pretty interesting if they hadn't made him so generically evil. It's like when the civil system from Psychopath suddenly laughed evilly at the end of the first season. It kind of ruins the ambiguity. Same thing with his 2 main lackeys whose final words pretty much define their characters. They did accomplish their roles by being threatening villains and all that, but nothing more than that. Now, the original trio on the other hand was great. We'll talk about one of them a little bit later on, but I gotta say, Westar was definitely one of my favorite characters. Yeah, as a villain, he kind of sucked, only occasionally cranking out a good MLTW, but he was also one of the most entertaining characters. Yeah, he's a bad guy, but doesn't mean he can't have some fun while he's doing it. On top of that, I really liked his relationship with Setsuna. Possibly even more than Mobius, he valued his connections with his comrades more than anything else. Even after she joined the Precure, he was constantly trying to get Setsuna to rejoin their side. Not for any reason other than he just wanted things to go back the way they were. He's kind of like a big kid in that sense. Just wants to have fun and wants everything to stay the same. Though, as for actual villains, I think Solar was the best. Unlike Mobius, who by the end had become over-reliant on Shifon's powers, Solar was a very clever villain, and as a result, he probably contributed the most to Labyrinth's victories. The thing about the Naki wa Meiki is that often they're only as powerful as the user's imagination. Thus, even with technically the weakest monster type of the series, he created some pretty effective monsters, like one that nearly murdered every mother in town, and another that recreated the misery that was Haruhi's Endless 8. True evil. Really, I kind of wish he had just pulled a Starscream and taken over as the final boss of the series. Not to say I disliked his and Westar's face turns, but I just think it would have been cool. Moving on to side characters, of which we only really have 3 to talk about, and not these 3. It really says something when even Spike from MLP is more developed than these guys. Anyway, starting off with Tart, he went above most animal sidekicks by actually having a personality, and at least a bit of an arc. In spite of being the prince of a kingdom, he never really brought it up, most likely because he never really took it seriously. Hence, when he was given actual princely duties like finding and guiding the Precure, he was against it because, well, he just was lazy. Still, as anyone does in that situation, he formed a legitimate bond with the team, willingly going out of his way to ensure their health when they were overexerting themselves, and even sacrificing sleep to prevent Shifon from becoming the Infinity. His development overall wasn't anything spectacular. His relationship with Azukina felt rather superfluous. But again, at least it was something, which is a lot more than I can say about a lot of mascot characters out there. As I said throughout, I thought Miyuki was a great mentor character. Yes, she kinda made some mistakes in this final arc, but it also kinda made her feel more human, which is probably the best way I can describe her. She approaches everything realistically. She knows that she's stuck in the middle of an insane war, but chooses to support the Precure in any way she can without ever really overstepping her bounds. Karu-chan also kind of served as a side mentor, occasionally giving some wise sage advice and all that, but mostly acting as a counselor for the Precure when they were down, and often just making little jokes here and there. Appropriate considering his VA was a comedian. It's heavily implied that he knew early on that they were superheroines, but for whatever reason never said anything. I'd imagine he just didn't want to bother them by being yet another secret identity keeper alongside Miyuki. It's also worth mentioning that his voice actor Ken Maeda helped with the anime's dance choreography, including the ending dance sequences. Sadly, Maeda passed away earlier this year due to sudden cardiac arrest, but at least he left behind a funny and entertaining donut vendor / F1 racer / secret agent character for us all to enjoy. Moving on to our main characters, let's talk about the Red Gal, who everyone couldn't stop talking about until yet another Red Gal appeared. Alright, arguments about who's the better Six Ranger aside, it's hard to deny that Setsuna didn't pull off a great face turn. As is, she was an evil yet charismatic villainess who fans love to hate. And as Setsuna, she was an amiable and well-nuanced character. I mean, really, think about it. This was a girl who had spent the last 14 years of her life worshipping a false idol, who in the end threw her away like she was nothing. Thus, much of her post-Ys arc involved her figuring out what she should do with her life after her god had forsaken her. Isn't it nice when children's shows don't baby their audiences? And while a lot of her screen time was dedicated to her atoning for her sins, I think the more interesting aspect of Setsuna's character came when she was adjusting to her new lifestyle. Of course she would start off quiet and reclusive because she doesn't know how to process stuff like having an actual family and friends. However, as the series went on, she became more open and even wanted to share some of her new passions with her former tormentor. While I would agree she was a little overexposed in the second half of the anime, it's also hard to say she didn't earn it. Inori was definitely the heart of the team, ironically more so than the two heroines with actual heart motifs. What I mean by this is that she was likely the most considerate member of the team. Often her episodes focused on her trying to figure out what others expected or needed from her. This would often conflict with her own anxiety issues, but ultimately she would overcome them and do what she needed to do for others. After all, one of her goals was to take after her parents and become a vet. She needs to learn how to take the initiative in communicating with and taking care of others, human or animal. She was also implied to be a devout Christian who would always try to find the goodness in everyone, even former enemies. Really, as far as casual viewers were concerned, Inori was probably the most relatable member of the team. And while she didn't do quite as much as the others and was definitely underutilized, her likability shined through regardless. Miki, in her own words, was a perfectionist, and as is so often the case, this would prove to be both her greatest strength and weakness. Yes, her perfectionist tendencies would give her a powerful drive to get the job done, but it would also often lead to her being a little obsessive-compulsive and short-sighted. Most notably when she tried to force Chiffon to give her a cure stick, and her whole thing with Setsuna. The original Japanese fans didn't care for her much because of this, but while some of her actions were a little bit less forgivable than others, I think it all ultimately gave her more depth. Her arc was about accepting the fact that things don't always work out the way we plan. And again, child abuse aside, I did see her side of the argument in regards to dealing with Setsuna. She wasn't necessarily wrong in her argument, but when love showed her a better option, she swallowed her pride and took back what she said. So yeah, in spite of what she says, Miki is not perfect, but at least she owns up to her own mistakes. Last up, we have the leader of the team, and my personal favorite character of this anime, Love Momozono. Her grandfather gave her that name because he believed that she could spread her love and kindness to everyone around her, with the idea that the English word love is more widely known than the Japanese word I. And sure enough, I think she's lived up to his expectations. Sometimes through questionable methods, but nonetheless she does everything in her power to help others. In fact, I think the main reason why Love is my favorite is because while she does have many of the traits found in your typical magical girl leader, she also exhibited some traits that are more commonly found in common writers. More than anything else, Love proved to me that she was worthy of the title of Precure when she showed mercy towards Setsuna, and then later accepted the responsibilities of such actions by personally confronting her, even though she still honestly considered her a friend. Because sometimes just protecting someone isn't enough. Accepting responsibilities and consequences others can't may be an even more important duty. In the process, the hero or heroine may end up sacrificing a part of themselves, but that is a price they are willing to pay. Love was a great leader because of her overflowing confidence, strong spirit, and most of all, kind heart. While this season's plot did drag at points and there were some either underdeveloped or underutilized characters, it was still a very enjoyable watch with great characters and an engaging story. The animation was consistently pretty good. There were dips here and there, but nothing inexcusable for a long-running weekly show. The music was a lot of fun to listen to. Seriously, the second theme is an absolute earworm. All in all, it was a significant comeback after a fairly disappointing previous season. Interestingly enough, one of the major themes of this season is about people accepting their own flaws and imperfections and learning from them. In a meta context, I wonder if this was Toei's way of acknowledging they made mistakes during the production of their last Precure season and that they were going to learn from them. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking things, but either way, I do think they learned from their mistakes, and thanks to that, the Precure franchise was saved and is still going on strong.
And while our coverage of this anime is technically ended, there are still a couple of things related to this series worth talking about. Check that next time as we take a look at the other property that helped save this franchise. Until then though, farewell for now, my friends.